Oh,
Oh, broadcast is live. That's what it's saying. It's literally saying that we are live right now, Allison.
it does. We're here.
Yeah, way cool. Oh gosh, we're like 10 seconds in. This is really fun.
Are we been here for 10
Yeah.
seconds already?
Wait, 15 now. We've been live for 15 seconds. This is great.
Wow, look at
I
us,
know.
just hanging out
Just hanging out.
like
Like,
we
did
own
you
the
ever think that
place.
it would be like this? Did you ever think that we'd be like hanging out in a space like
Yeah,
this?
especially across this distance, man. We're so far away.
I'm amazed. I'm amazed at technology and that you still want to deal with me after like all this time. Like,
Listen, I've made my decision.
so I don't even know if anybody's watching live right now. Maybe they will join us in a bit. Maybe this will
I
be
am.
something that you are. What? Thank you, thank you, thank you. One person that's in Facebook watching us live right now. Very excited for our very first Studio Wesley live event. Very excited. We're gonna do these once a month, and we're just gonna continue to try to make content that's gonna be helpful for a lot of people, specifically college age young adults. So again, welcome to Studio Wesley live this evening. Allison, how are you doing this evening?
I'm a little tired, but I'm really excited to be in this space with everybody here. So
Yeah,
very excited for this.
I'm really excited. By the way, I'm Derrick Scott III. I am the creative producer of Studio Wesley, and Allison Corin. I don't know what your title is right
I
now.
don't either.
You're the person in charge of everything. That's what it is. Like,
I don't know if
so
we've like messed with my title in a
we
while.
have Allison Corin in charge of everything. That's the title. So we're excited about tonight's conversation that we're going to have. We are in the middle of a project called the Wellness Project. We're focused on mental health and wellness for college-aged young adults in Studio Wesley World right now. We'll be there for a good bit, actually, for the next several months, really trying to bring resources that'll be helpful for college-age young adults in their journey of mental health and wellness. And so with that, Allison, you've got a new show that just started a couple weeks ago. And so you want to tell us about it?
Yeah, I already used the word excited, but I can't think of a better one. I'm very excited for that as well. It's called Talking Mental Health. It's a video podcast available on the Wellness Project's website, YouTube. It's linked on all of our socials. But basically, I interview mental health professionals on topics within the mental health and wellness field, but specifically as they relate to college-aged young adults. So a few episodes have aired. We have anxiety and depression, eating disorders, I believe, went up last week, and I have one on dignity and self-worth. So I'm very excited. I'm planning more, excited for what's to come, and so far I'm having a good time. It's very informative, so I've enjoyed doing them.
I'm excited about the show and just the ability to make these resources available to anybody, but especially college-age young adults. That's our heartbeat. So tonight this is our first live show, and tonight I'm excited about who we've got to chat with tonight, and the guy we're going to listen to. His name's Krispin Mayfield, and I just cannot wait for people to hear him. He just recently released a book called Attached to God. He is a licensed professional counselor. He's been doing that for 7 years. He lives in Portland, Oregon, and I am just excited for him to talk tonight. So much good stuff that he's putting out into the world these days. So before we bring Krispin in, I want to thank Michael Yerrick, who is the tech behind the scenes tonight. We love you, my dude. We're so grateful for you. Could not do this without you, literally, because you're the one who sent us the link. So thanks, Michael, for everything. And now let's bring Krispin in and introduce him to everyone. Krispin, good evening, my friend. How are you?
Good. I'm so glad to be here. It's thrown me off. It is a sunny day in Portland, Oregon right now.
Okay, and it is like super cloudy, overcast, stormy in Jacksonville. How is it in Tampa?
It's
Allison?
been cloudy, overcasty, and raining all day in Tampa.
Wow, we traded weather. I
We
mean,
did. We did. And people who know me know that I'm happy with today's weather in Jacksonville, and the sunshine is so overrated. So anyway, this is not Studio Wesley Live starring Derrick. This is Studio Wesley Live featuring Krispin Mayfield. Krispin, can you just tell us a little bit of just about you and what you're doing these days?
Yeah, so I am I specialize in couples therapy, actually, but I've also been working at an ADHD clinic for 6 years, and so I do a lot of things, work with a lot of college kids, because when you have ADHD, college can be an extra challenge. Imagine that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, and so yeah, getting people support, working on that sort of stuff. That's a little bit of my background there. But I am trained in attachment-based therapy called EFT. So I do a lot around attachment science. I'll be talking about that tonight, which is really just like the science of relationships. And I recently released a book about what the science of relationships has to say about faith, because you know, in our brains we relate to God as a person, and it actually comes up in the same way that our brain processes other relationships. There's some differences as well, but yeah, and so that's what I've been doing. I've been came out a month ago, and I am quite tired of being on the internet, because
Thank
that's
you for giving us a few more minutes of your
yes.
internet time.
Well, I love this. I'm just tired of the, you know, Instagram posts and all the stuff, but this
Yeah.
is so fun to just like get to connect and talk with people. So yeah, so I'm just really excited to get connected with you, and I love Studio Wesley and the stuff that you're doing. So
Oh, thanks, man.
yeah.
I gotta be honest. So, I first heard you on the Gravity Leadership podcast. So it's been a few months now, and I was not expecting to be sort of, you know, moved or anything like that. I was literally, you know, we were getting ready for this project, and so I'm just listening to different podcasts on mental health and the intersection of faith and relationships and things like that. And so I'm just like, it's just in the playlist, and I'm like washing dishes, and then I'm laid out on the kitchen floor, and like my cat's like, what's happening to him? Because I'm like having emotions, which I don't have very much. But you just you're talking about attachment theory and specifically attachment to God. And it just resonated with me so deeply and
Mhm.
was helpful for me and my own mental health journey. And so, you know, tonight we want to talk about specifically the role of parents as relates to the mental health journey of college aged young adults. But I'm pretty sure there'll be some intersections of how we feel about God and things like that. And so
Mhm.
we're just really grateful that you would take some time to be with us this evening to do this show. Allison, is there anything that we want to say before we jump out of this space and let Crispin have main stage?
I'm just really excited to hear what he has to say. I love spaces like this, the informative parts of it. So I'm excited to know more.
Way cool. And friends, if you've got any questions and you happen to be watching live, you can put those in the chat in Facebook, and we're going to be paying attention to those. We might have some time to get to some of those questions later this evening. So um, without further ado, we're going to step out, and Crispin, you're going to take it. Go for it.
All right. Yeah, I am really excited to talk about attachment, and like I said, I have some special experience of working with people that are going through this transition period. That's what I think of college as. Obviously, you come in at one point and you come out at a totally different point. It might be the one of the biggest transitions in our lives, and so it does take some intentionality. How do you get through this time of transition, and still take care of your mental health while you're trying to balance relationships, friendships, spirituality, on top of trying to do schoolwork? And then also on top of that, I was thinking about just that dynamic of a lot of times colleges where we come into contact with different ideas and different ways of seeing the world. So really, like, it kind of feels like everything is up for grabs when it comes to college. Maybe that's just my experience, but I think for so many of us, you know, you come in at one place and there's just so much transformation that happens during that time. And and actually, I was thinking about my own experience. I was a missionary kid. So thinking about how, what's that role of parents when it comes to college? And for me, my parents were on the other side of the world. They were in China. So I would be up at 3 a.m. Because of the time difference, like trying to talk to my parents on the phone, whispering, trying to not wake up my roommate. Super obnoxious, roommate behavior. But I really just needed to like talk through things with them, or have them help me problem solve. But really, like, when it came down to it, a lot of it was just that sense of connection. You need that connection with someone that you love. And we do definitely build such deep relationships in college, but they don't come automatically, and they don't come right away. And so I just remember what that was like for me. Just, it was so important to connect with my parents periodically, especially because I didn't get to go see them on every break or weekends or that sort of thing. But having that connection is really important and really grounding. And that's what we're going to talk about. What I'm going to talk about tonight is, as humans, we need these core secure relationships. And we primarily get that for the first part of our lives from our parents. And so it can be a really difficult time, a really difficult transition as we leave our parents, and try to figure out what does that look like, because they are still they can still hold that place of bringing some security and some connection, but it's not the same as it was before. And so exploring a little bit about what that looks like is going to be important. And before we go to talking about college, I wanted to give a little bit of a framework and a picture of what was really important to me in understanding attachment. So attachment science, and I love that I'm talking to a lot of people in college, so you might be learning about this right now. Attachment science has really grown over the past like 50-60 years, and really looking at this idea that as humans we need connection. We used to think babies need to be fed, and they need clothing. They need to be changed, and that's it. And so we would actually approach kids that way. You would have kids that would be maybe like hospitalized for surgery, and they're just alone for a week, because it's like, all right, as long as they're fed and warm, they're okay. And so this is kind of where the story comes from. John Bowlby is the founder of attachment theory, and he was looking at the story of this little boy named Patrick. Patrick was 3 years old. Maybe the reason that this is impactful for me is because my son was 3 years old when I first read this, so I could just sort of picture it in my mind. But Patrick lived in England in the 1940s. He was part of a foster care nursery sort of system for single moms. His mom was a single mother. She would go and work, and then he would just stay at this kind of 24-hour daycare. She wasn't giving up parental rights. She could always take him home, but that was sort of where he lived so that she could work and he could get cared for. But right after she drops him off at the nursery, let me not get ahead of myself. She drops him off at the nursery and says, "If you're a good boy and you don't cry, mommy will come back and take you home." And so she leaves, but she immediately gets hospitalized for influenza. So she's in the hospital. Patrick is 3 years old, doesn't know this, right? He's left overnight, left another night. And the staff noticed that he would look like he was about to cry, because 3-year-olds cry when they miss their mom. But she had told him, "I'll come back for you if you're a good boy and you don't cry." So he just nodded his head. He would just nod his head like every time that he was about to cry. It's just really heartbreaking to think about. Uh, just thinking about the the tenacity, I guess, that it would take for a 3-year-old to hold back tears. It's really heartbreaking. And it's really just because he's like, I need this connection. I need this relationship with my mom. Maybe she'll come back if I don't cry. And she's gone longer, and he starts to tell this story to himself and anyone else that will listen, basically saying, um, My mom's going to come back. She'll put my hat on. She'll put my boots on. She'll zip up my jacket and she'll take me home. And he just repeats that over and over. And the nursery staff gets annoyed. They're like, stop repeating this over and over. And so again, he wants to be a good boy. He wants his mom to come back. So he stops telling it. He just starts miming it and saying it without his voice, right? So he just starts like mimicking the words, just standing there in the corner doing this over and over. And after a couple more days, he just sort of collapsed in the corner. The other kids are playing, having fun, and he's just miming this narrative over and over in this really slow, sad way. And there is a happy ending to this story. He actually, his mom gets better, comes back, picks him up, and they're able to go back and fix that rupture. But it really speaks to when we lose that primary connection with someone, there's so much grief and pain, and we'll do whatever we can to get it. And so that for me was really like the light went on thinking about attachment. And we're not going to talk too much about this tonight, but I did think about, like, when we think about faith, how many of us approach faith that way, where it's like, I'm doing whatever I can. I'm trying to be a good boy so that, God will stay near. And so it really, a light bulb went off in my brain to think about just this immense drive we have to connect with God, our parents, the people that we love. And what we found over time is it started out recognizing, okay, babies need their parents, which sounds obvious to us now, but that wasn't always an assumption in Western society. But then we went on and we realized, oh, this actually applies to older kids. It applies to partners. So if you're in a relationship with someone over the course of a couple of years, this same attachment develops. Friendships, it really can be any relationship, because this connection is so important to us. We are created by a relational God, and we are created to be in relationship. And so we need these deep, secure relationships to be healthy people. And there's actually been some studies about when we have this secure relationship, it helps us get our emotional balance. And there's a study by Cohn and Johnson where they they looked at a bunch of partners, a bunch of couples, and they took the female partner from the couple, these are heterosexual couples, and shocked her, which is, one of those like psychological experiments where you get to hurt people a little bit. They shocked her and they had her in a brain scan machine and saw that the pain lit up. The pain part of her brain lit up when they shocked her. Just a little shock, but definitely pain. Then they brought in someone that she didn't know. That person would hold her hand, did the shock again, and the pain part of the brain lights up again under the brain scan. Then they brought in a partner that she felt secure with, and so someone that she really had a deep emotional bond with, and did the same thing. And the brain scan actually showed discomfort but not pain. And so what we see there, that's just one analogy, but when we have that person that we really care about and really matter to and have that emotional bond with, can even help with pain. It helps us cope with life. It helps us bounce back from emotions that are uncomfortable. Some have said that connection or attachment is the make or break point for mental health. I think that's too strong of a claim, because people have anxiety, depression, a lot of other mental health challenges for a lot of different reasons. But that connection and closeness is so helpful in managing and dealing and coping and recovering with a mental health diagnosis. So it doesn't mean that you're not going to experience depression or anxiety or whatever it is. But when we have that person in our life that really cares about us, that's really there with us, it can be such a helpful thing. And that's really like where I'm also coming from in my book, thinking about God and attachment, because if it feels like God is always disappointed in you, like that's not actually going to be a helpful relationship. But if you have this sense of like, God cares about me, God's on my side, that can be really helpful with even things like depression or anxiety. We know that faith doesn't cure those things, but we need to know that there's a God that's with us when we're right in the middle of it. And yeah, so having this secure bond, it's been shown to give us more empathy. We make better decisions. We make more ethical decisions. This grounding connection is just so important. And there are kind of three elements of this connection. The first is this person available to me in that moment of need? Can I reach out to them? So you think about, whoever it is in your life that you're like, I had a terrible day. I really need to talk to this person. For me, it's usually my wife, who I've been married to for 14 years now. But it might be a friend, it might be a parent, it might be a mentor, it might be your dog. Um, which is just important to mention, because I know that not everyone has someone in their life that I can always rely on, but finding someone that you can connect to can be really important. And for some people, it is their pet. And I think that is a really great thing. But going back to this idea of, do you have that person that you can access when you need them? And maybe it's not in the moment, but it's like, I know that in the next couple of days, I can talk to this person. That's the first piece. The second is, do you have that person in your life that's responsive to your emotions? And so when you're sad, do they try to comfort you? When you say you've had a bad day, do they say, oh, tell me about it? We really, as humans, need that. We need to know that we matter to someone else. That's part of that security. And then the third is someone who's engaged with us. So someone who approaches us, who gives us a call, right? Who says, hey, can we hang out? There's got to be some element of mutuality there. I don't know if you've ever been in a relationship where it's like, I'm always the person that calls, I'm always the person that asks to hang out. That can be fine, but when it comes to this secure relationship, we need to know this is the person that wants to be with me. They are engaged with me. They're thinking about me. And this whole idea of having this secure relationship is just, again, how we keep our emotional balance in the world. There's another study, I think this is the last study I'm going to reference, but it's called Social Support and the Perception of Geographical Slant. And actually what it is they found out that when people are standing at the bottom of a hill, if they were standing with another person, they estimated that it wasn't as steep as if they were doing it alone. And so what they find there is, basically, just as humans, when we are connected with another person, when we're with another person, even things like hills don't seem as overwhelming. And that really is the core of it, is that we need that connection to cope with life. We can get a lot of skills, like mindfulness or whatever it is, that can be really helpful coping skills. But what we found in really in attachment research is that having someone just to talk to is just as effective as a lot of the coping skills or emotional regulation skills that we teach in therapy. We are created for connection and for community. And this is where, if we think about college, this is an in-between time, right? You come in and you're like, all right, like my family's not here. My people, or I like to think about attachment like we are herd animals, right? We generally prefer to be in a herd. We feel safest that way. And so all of a sudden you're taken out of this herd place and out of your herd, and it could be family, but you also think about the people that in your hometown. You have this whole group of people that you're connected to, and there's so much benefit out of that. And then you go to college and you don't have that. You have people that are hopefully they're offering for you to lean on them. Um, but it takes a little while for that to form. So on the surface, there's usually a lot of excitement. This is really fun. If you're a nerd like I am, you're like, I'm excited to learn. But under that, there can be that attachment longing that says, am I alone here? Where are my people? Who do I go to? If I'm feeling stressed, what do I do here? And that's actually where our attachment system kicks in. We start to figure out, what do I do with my emotions? And that's a whole nother topic on attachment styles, which are you can find those out there. I talk quite a bit about them. And basically it's like, when we feel stressed, when we feel disconnected, how do we deal with that? But what I want to point out is just that college is really a difficult time for us as humans, because we're in the middle of connection. And even if you maybe go to school with friends that you've been with, or maybe you go to school somewhere that's close enough to home, it's still a change, and there's still this shift, and it's an important shift. We actually are in this process of leaving our family of origin in a way and creating our own chosen family. But it really does a number on our attachment system. And so, first of all, I just wanted to give some space for that as we're talking about it tonight, is just to say, this is your nervous system is trying to figure out, how do I get my footing? And so really it can be disorienting. And then you're also adding stress on top of it. You're being asked to manage your life probably in a way that you haven't been asked to manage it before. I mentioned I'm an ADHD therapist. And so I remember reading this book about ADHD a few years ago, and I think it resonates. Well, it resonates with me, and I don't have ADHD. Um, but I think it resonates across the board. It was talking about this student that was doing really well in high school, and then they went to college and really struggled. And they were kind of exploring, like, what is it that was so much harder about college? And they said, it wasn't like my parents were nagging me all the time. It wasn't like they were checking in on me, but just having someone that knew, if I stayed out all night, they were going to know, or, if I wasn't doing my homework, they were going to find out. Just having that like engagement was really helpful. And then going to college, where it's like, I'm kind of on my own here, made it so much harder to stay motivated, to stay on task. And so what we find is that there's even this element of like, doing the stuff we need to do is easier when we're in that community. And so that's another point that I just again want to highlight. Colleges, I think of it as a steep hill, right? And you are standing at the bottom of it, and you're realizing, like, maybe the people that have been with me all this way, they're still there, but they're there in a really different way. And so thinking about how do I take care of myself during this transition time? And I think that is, I mean, there's so many different things when it comes to mental health in college, and lots of resources. But what we find in the in the attachment community is how important that is to have that relationship. And it makes sense, right? If you have people around you that know you, then they can look at your behavior and be like, hey, are you doing okay? Those are the people that you can share with, to say, I'm not doing okay, or here's what I need, or those sorts of things. And so this transition period, this bridge period, can be really hard. And so there are a few, I just came up with a few different things. One is just investing in a surrogate family, not a replacement family, but figuring out who are some of the healthy people around. And usually these are people that are saying, hey, I want to support you. Sometimes that, looks like campus ministry things. It could be, the dorm leader, or, whoever it is, but looking at like, who is it that's telling me, hey, I want to support you, and taking them up on that. And that's not the same as an attachment relationship, but if you are really paying attention to that, then it really can be a way to figure out, like, all right, how can I get my footing here, basically. The other is to give room for those emotions. So it is going to be a period of grief, actually. John Bowlby, founder of attachment theory, talked a lot about how when these attachment relationships shift, either we lose them, or, at college, where it's like, I'm not seeing your face every day, there actually is a grief there. It feels, our attachment system responds as though there's been a death. At least on that spectrum. It might not be as intense as grief, but it hits on that spectrum. And so recognizing, yeah, I am gonna be going through a grief. I'm going through a difficult time. I might feel homesick, and giving some space for that. And then the other thing that I would suggest is figuring out, how do you periodically check in with family? How do you periodically have time to connect? I was in college in the days where we could just do the phone, and I think Skype was like maybe like starting to happen a little bit. But being able to see the faces of the people that you love can be really helpful. And so you want to strike this balance of, you don't want to just not engage with college life, but if you can figure out a rhythm that works well to connect with your family, that's going to help you keep your emotional balance. And this is all kind of under the caveat of assuming that your family is healthy enough, that you have good enough parents. Parents don't have to be perfect. They just have to get it right 50% of the time, during those times that they need to get it right. So, you don't have to have perfect parents, but if you do feel that security with your family, figuring out what are ways to connect periodically. If you don't, maybe you got through high school through certain friendships, or through other relationships, making that a priority to connect, as you're doing this bridge transition period, as you're building new relationships, because those new relationships are going to take a little time. So that is that's an attachment therapist take on mental health in college. And I am excited to get into some questions as well.
Awesome. Oh my, Crispin, thank you. Like, ah, I'm like taking notes and like paying attention to like stuff happening, and we're chatting like in the private chat, because we're
Mhm.
like having our own moment as we're like still trying to like pay attention and contribute. And so just thank you so much for sharing. Oh gosh. Okay. So let me just go to some questions here.
Great. Yeah.
Because again, like, and we're gonna do our best, with just the time that we've got. Um,
Mhm.
yeah. Okay. Thank you for naming this in between kind of space, and even
Mhm.
saying that college is just hard for humans. And I've been
Mhm.
hanging out with this age group, for 2 decades, and I know that. But I think it's great when it can be said by someone
Mhm.
who's not.
Right.
Right. And I think it's huge for college age young adults to hear that too. So
Mhm.
what are some ways college students can cope in this in between time, between leaving family and creating this new emotional
Mhm.
support system?
Yeah, so this is an attachment hack. Um,
Awesome.
I just, even, I guess, even to piggyback off of what you said, you've known this, right? This is such a hard time.
Mhm,
And what we know now is your nervous system is feeling it. Your nervous
mhm,
system is, you've been separated from the pack, and being in the pack is connected to your survival. So all of a sudden you're like, all right, I feel alone here. And
mm,
it really is going to take a toll on you. And so you need that extra care. Um, but along those lines, picturing someone that really cares about you in your mind, what would they say to you in this moment, right? It's 3 a.m. and you're trying to get a paper done and you're like, yeah, I can't call my parents right now. Like,
Yeah.
one, they're sleeping, two, they're gonna be like, why are you up at 3
Yeah.
a.m.? But thinking about, like, if they were there with you, or if whoever it is, maybe it's like grandma, maybe it's like a teacher from school that you felt really from high school that you felt really connected to, closing your eyes, thinking about, like, all right, what would they say to me in this moment? Can I picture their face? Can I bring up their tone of voice? That's actually that's so effective in helping you calm down.
Yeah.
And so there's that piece of, like, you don't need those people around you all the time to access that relationship. And so I think that can be really helpful for folks, because you are in this transition period, and just you can't just stay where you grew up
Right.
always, right?
Right.
But how can I take that with me? And then I think that also plays into faith, where it's like, can I, like, is God with me here?
Mm, mm.
But that has a lot depending on what's your view of God, and right, is God also going to be like, why didn't you get this done earlier? Or
Right.
is God gonna, is this picture of God much more compassionate and like, yeah, this is really hard. I can see how hard this is for you. You're trying really hard,
Mhm.
and we're gonna get through it.
So helpful. And I can even just imagine, many in our campus kind of world, we have a lot of commuter students. So some of them actually still live at home,
Mm,
but I think that there is this sense of um, like you said earlier, just like I'm going to class, but is anybody paying attention to that?
mm-hmm.
I'm out with friends and we're doing things that probably does anybody
Right.
like? And so I think that there is this
Mm-hmm.
this sense of like even if we're still living at home or the proximity to home is still
Mm-hmm.
quite close, like there's still this in betweenness that gets
Mm-hmm.
experienced.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah,
go
right.
ahead.
And I think, like, thinking about folks that are not living on campus, that's its own in between, because a lot of times it's like, all right, like, my friends are going on with their lives here, like,
Hmm.
but I'm showing up to classes as a commuter student. I'm like, maybe I eat lunch somewhere and try to talk to someone, but that can be a really hard way to form community too. And
Yeah.
so another in between place of, like, I'm not fully in this community because I'm commuting in every day. That can
Hmm.
also be its own hard thing.
Man. So on a practical level, what can I'm gonna first ask the question about parents, and then I'll go
Okay.
to students
Yeah.
themselves. On a practical level, how can parents care for and contribute to the mental health of their college students? Just in case there might be a parent that watches this or something.
Right.
Like
Yeah.
what
Uh-huh.
can they do?
Yeah. And I think, like, I think I, I think it's both for both students and parents, is to figure out, like, what are the resources,
Mhm.
what are, and that's actually something that I really appreciate about colleges, and I don't know. I don't know if I can speak to where things are at right now. But like, right now in Portland and throughout the US, it's really hard to find a therapist.
Mhm.
But historically, my experience with colleges has been, you have a bunch of master's students that are ready to meet with students. And so that's something that's really cool. Just figuring out, like, how do I get connected there? And being proactive, whether it's like, yeah, this is just going to be a difficult time and it's not going to hurt me
Mhm.
to see a counseling student each week, um or is it like, all right, I know where the resources are, so that if things hit a point, like, I already know where the counseling center is, or I already know how to get therapy. um And so I think that's one of the biggest things is just like to as soon as you show up, just be like, all right, like where are the things, sort of like getting on the airplane and they're like, all right, here are the emergency exits. Like we want to do
Yeah.
the same thing, right? Like
Yeah.
don't wait until you're feeling completely overwhelmed to then figure out like, all right, who do I ask for help?
Right.
Right. And it might be like, where's the counseling center? But it also might be like, all right, who's the person that I go to that has the resources, right?
Mhm.
Who's the person that I can say, hey, I'm struggling with this. Where do I go?
Yeah.
So I think that's huge. I think building self advocacy is really important. So just whether you're a parent or a student, recognizing that there are resources there and you're going to need to be the one to ask for them.
Mm.
And that I think as a college student can be just such a hard shift
Right.
because, you're just used to things happening to you on some level, right? Your
To
parents.
you and for you.
Yeah,
And
exactly.
yeah.
And so recognizing like they are there, like there is someone on campus that is excited for you to walk through the door and work on things, whether it's like mental health or tutoring or like whatever it is. Like colleges are set up for you to be successful, but recognizing, right, having that like if you're the parent, having that conversation with the student, or if you're a student, just recognizing like this is something that I need to take a step on.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Gosh.
So yeah.
I I would follow up, but there's just not enough time, and I want to get to some other questions. So, um, I will bring something up a little bit later, but I'm wondering, is it possible then? I was a college student who felt like I had to do this on my own,
Mm,
and that was actually some of the problem that I felt like
mm.
that I had to. Yeah, I am the avoidant attachment style. If you hadn't figured that out, Crispin, and so and the harder it got, the more I pulled away,
Mm-hmm.
and
Right. If I could just jump in
yeah, come
right
on,
there, that is because, like I said, we have these strategies that kick in when we're under stress. And
yeah,
for some people, it's like, I'm under stress. I'm going to scream and let everyone know my emotions, which is one way of doing it. Another way of doing it is like, I am under stress. I got to white knuckle this and get it through and not let anybody know that I'm struggling.
yeah. I mean, and one day I'll tell you the story of Derrick and really 17 years in undergrad, and so much of it was like that. The harder it got, the more I just pulled away, pulled away, pulled away.
Mm-hmm.
I think I know the answer to the question. And that was my dog saying, yes, that's exactly what he did and still does. Um, can you be too disconnected from your family during college?
Yeah, so I think that's something that parents worry about, right? Like, where's my, well, it can go either way.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
my I had an aunt in the area that was sort of my secure like home base, and my parents were sort of at one point were like, you got to stop like leaning on her so much, which is a whole family dynamics
Yeah,
thing.
yeah,
But I think generally parents are like, I'm worried about my kid. They seem too independent, are they doing too much? And so I think it's just so important for parents to just say, we're here for you when we need it, when you need us. But you're doing your own thing, right? You're trying to figure
mhm,
it out. This isn't about us. You don't have to keep us happy. We're trying to support you. Because the ultimate truth of it is you don't have much control when your kid leaves, right?
so yeah, I think you might need to say that again because that's hard. Like 18 years of like taking care of somebody and like
Right.
putting food on
Uh-huh.
the roof and like you have these dreams for this like human that you've raised and then like
Mhm.
they're like, I'm not gonna be a doctor, I'm gonna be an artist, like
Right. Yes. Yeah.
ah
Right. Yeah. Uh-huh. Yeah. I mean, you're speaking to me after freshman year being like, I'm going to be a English major. No hate on the English majors, but my parents were like, yeah, like, what are you gonna do with that?
Yeah.
So,
Yeah,
because I didn't really want to teach, so
I
you
get
know,
that. Hmm.
but yeah, it's hard, but yeah, being that parent, where it's like I'm here for you. You don't say this, but I can't control your behavior, right? So the way that I can be most supportive is be that person that you can come to when you get stuck, right?
Hmm.
And so I think that is just want to put parents' minds to rest that, yeah, your kid is going to be, experimenting with some distance,
Yeah.
and really, I mean, you're again in this in between place, right? So they're still like they're coming, home on Christmas break, or like maybe they're commuting in and they're living at home, right? But this really is a huge step into, I'm more of an adult, and that day is coming where you're
Yeah.
not going to have a say in my life.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
and that's doesn't always happen in college, but it's coming. So it's a good time to practice. How do I be supportive without being, we recognizing the power that I hold, and trying to meet my kid where they're at.
So, how do we tell the difference between homesickness, stress, and like the kind of like debilitating depression that
Mm,
like what are we looking for when a box of cookies from
mm,
home is the answer, and what are we looking
right.
for when like need to call up the campus minister and like do a health check on my kid?
Yeah. I think um I think this is a great question. And I think it's good to like hold both of these things. Like, yeah, this is gonna be a hard, stressful time. And what I look at is the are you, if you're the student, are you able to still move forward and connect? And I don't mean white knuckle it, but I mean
Mhm.
like, are you able to say like, yeah, this is a hard time and I'm going to take these steps forward and say like, maybe I need to connect more at home, or I need to be more intentional about connecting with people here. Maybe it's like maybe I need to go get some support in like, how do I organize my classes and schoolwork, etc. um but I think it is really important to recognize like this is such an emotionally difficult time.
Mhm.
I mean, part of me is like, well, just it doesn't matter, just get into therapy anyway. Um,
Yeah, I think everybody
because
should, yes.
right, yeah. And I'm not even like a across the lifespan, like you should always be in therapy, but I think with maybe that's just me coming from like my wait list of like
No, I'll just say that I used to say that like everybody should be in therapy, and then I am personally pulling back on that just because the capacity of the system,
right,
and
yeah,
so
yeah,
right,
all the therapists are like, stop saying
yeah,
that.
and some of the whole reason for the wellness project is we do have
Hmm.
this like lopsided thing where the need of college age young adults to
Hmm.
have this kind of support has never been higher, never been
Right.
greater, and the capacity of the system that is in place
Hmm.
is just not designed
Right.
in general for college students, but
Right.
also COVID and all of just the changes
Hmm.
happening. So how
Yeah.
do we create more spaces, normalize conversations? How do we
Mhm.
equip more students to do peer-to-peer, basic, like just
Mhm.
on-ramp kind of support of each other? And then so that
Right.
there's a culture of mental health and wellness as
Mhm.
opposed to the crisis of mental health and wellness.
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
So
Exactly.
so
Now you
sorry,
got
let me
me saying amen over here.
okay, careful, careful.
But
That's
yeah, I think that's the thing, is like recognizing this is difficult, and are you, reaching out to the people in your life? I think that's a great
mhm,
great thing. And it really is, it's different for each person, but recognizing if it's like I'm feeling really stuck, I feel myself closing off instead of looking for support. I think that's one of the biggest things. Of course you can look through like anxiety and depression symptoms, especially if you're having trouble sleeping, feeding yourself, those sorts of, I don't mean like you can't make a sandwich, but just like, oh, like I keep on missing meals, that sort of thing. Those are some good indications that at least check in with a therapist and be like, hey, would therapy be helpful for me? But I think beyond that, it's looking at like, am I closing myself off? And I just think, Derrick, you did a great example of talking about that, personal experience of it. And so, or is it like, yeah, this is stressful, but I know who my people are. I know how to get the support that I need. So,
Gosh. I'm gonna ask one more question, Crispin, and then Allison's gonna join us in a bit here. I'm curious, and this is actually coming from a text message that I got
okay.
during live here. So this is super, just like right out of the experience of one of our students. Breakups. So
Mm-hmm.
there's much that can be said about
Mm-hmm.
dramatic breakups
Mm.
in the college period of time, college age
Uh-huh.
period of time. But I'm curious how parents can be positive, non-anxious anxious
Mm.
presence, healing in a situation that they literally get like 5% of what actually happened,
Right.
right? So,
Oh.
what advice? I mean, there's so much we could say just about breakups in general,
Mm-hmm.
and so feel free to speak to that a little bit. But the thing I'd love for you to maybe
Mm.
angle on is parents and also people like me, campus ministers, and those who care
Mm-hmm.
for college age young adults. How do we come alongside college age young adults when breakups happen? They do.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I'm not saying I pray for them.
Right.
I'm
Yeah.
not always mad at them, but it
Right.
creates a lot of emotional trauma.
Mm-hmm.
How do we come alongside?
Oh yeah, I mean that is, and then there's I'm even going to the broader like relationships, right? And how do
Yeah.
you as a parent, because when you talk about breakups, I think of like what I as a therapist, people are telling me about a breakup, and I'm like, hey, I just want you to know, like, it sounds like you made a really good decision. I'm so glad that or I mean, if you're doing the breaking up, right?
Yeah. Yes. Yes.
And it goes either way, right? Or
Yeah.
maybe it's like they broke up with you and how this is really painful,
Mhm.
but I want you to know if you end up back with this person, like that's going to be okay. Because then they, with me,
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
they spend 2 sessions talking about how horrible this person is, and then like it gets quiet, and then like a month later they're like, oh yeah, we got back together, like you know 2 weeks ago, but I was too ashamed to tell you because I told you about how horrible they were.
You're a better person than me. I'm sorry, everybody that I've counseled for 20 years. Sorry, you're the better person.
Oh man, but yeah, I think just like, again, coming back to that, like, I care about you. Tell me what you want to tell me. I know that you don't tell me everything, and that's normal, like parent child, but I really care about you, so let me know how I can support you. And I know for some parents it's like this just feels so uh hands off, but the reality is that like once your kid is at this age, uh you can either approach them like an adult that needs support and guidance, or you can approach them like a kid and they will hide their behavior
Mhm.
and you won't know about it.
Yeah.
Or you can try to like use whatever, kind of guilt manipulation stuff, and maybe they'll feel bad, but probably not bad enough to do the thing that you like want them to do.
Yeah.
Right. I,
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
remember like, crossing some physical boundaries, in a relationship, and my parents made me feel guilty about it, but it was not guilty enough for me to stop going back to do the thing. Right. I'd have like one night of like, oh, my parents are so disappointed in me. And then, you just get over it. So,
yeah.
yeah.
Gosh,
So
fantastic.
I don't know if that
No,
that
that's,
answers
I think
the
that's
question.
helpful.
But,
No, I mean it's a large question, and I brought it at the close to the end. So I appreciate it. We want to get Allison back in here because I think she might actually have some other questions from the live audience.
I do. There's two of them,
Okay.
but they're kind of interrelated. So I think for time's sake, I'm gonna go ahead and ask you both.
Cool.
They're both related to that instance of someone going to therapy and their parents seeing it as a comment on their parenting abilities. So the two questions are, the first one, how can we prepare students for questions and curiosities or even boundaries about therapy? And then the second question is, any thoughts on engaging with that conversation?
Yeah, that's great. And I think, I mean, there's that kind of stereotype of like, you're going to go to therapy and talk about how terrible a parent I am and how that's where all the problems stem from. And, we do that sometimes in therapy. I would, but what I want to say is that really, especially when it comes to college students, like in general, how would I even put it? A lot of times it's like life coaching. It's like, how do I create a healthy lifestyle so that I feel good, so that I can meet my goals? And that is most often what's going on. So, it's either like a listening ear that can help me process things, and also someone that understands like the best ways to help a college student get work turned in on time and not feel stressed all the time, and create some healthy routines. And I think for parents to know that, like, I will just guarantee that's mostly what college counseling centers are focusing on. They're not all, I mean, sometimes they do like what we would call deep work, but usually it's just like, yeah, you're in this huge transition and you need someone to come alongside you and help you just function a little bit better, so that you feel better, so that you feel successful in your life, so that you're not as stressed. And I think presenting that to parents that way can be really helpful. And also it's okay to be like, yeah, I mean, it just really depends on the parent and stuff. But a lot of times it's like, yeah, I just, talk about stuff that's going on. And yeah, it's funny. This is where, like, as a therapist, I'm like, you ask me this question and I want to ask more specifics, right? Because it's just so different for each person.
Yeah.
But I think like framing it that way, like, yeah, they're really helping me manage stress and just helping me like kind of think through some things or talk through some things might be helpful. And it's okay to be like, to say something like, yeah, I don't, you see it off the fly. I'm like, I don't know how you would frame that to a parent, but just say something like, yeah, like, it's time for me. And it's really helpful. And I appreciate it if, like, I shared this with you that I'm going to see a therapist, but I just like that to be my time to talk about my stuff. And if there's something that I feel like you should know, I'll totally let you know.
Yeah. Krispin, I feel like we're gonna have to invite you back because there's like a whole bunch of stuff that I knew we wanted to talk about that we didn't talk about, and then we just added to that.
I'd love that.
So I just thank you so much. It's middle of the day where you are in the afternoon over there in Portland, and so I just thank you for taking some time out of your day to be with us this evening. We're just really grateful for everything that you said tonight, and everybody should go and grab his book, Attached to God. You can get it wherever books are sold, and he's on a ton of podcasts right now. Like, you just put in Krispin Mayfield in the Google search and all of them are going to pop up because I think there's a reason. I don't think it's just because the book dropped. I think that you really are speaking into the void of intersection of faith and mental health, and we're just really grateful for your contribution to it. So, Krispin, thanks so much for joining us tonight.
Thank you for hosting me. I said it at the beginning, but I love what you're doing. I think it's so important. So thanks for the work that you all do.
Thanks, Krispin. Rockin'. What'd you think, Allison?
That was so good. You know what? Honestly, I started this out so tired, and I just immediately was like awake and glued to the conversation. I couldn't. Yeah.
Well, did you have a takeaway from tonight?
Yeah. Oh gosh, there were so many things he said that resonated to like my experience as a college student, especially because I'm in this like weird period where I was a college student, got my bachelor's, felt like a full-fledged adult for a little while, and then went back to college. So like I feel like a college student again. But I think the biggest, going to like my first experience with my bachelor's, is he was talking about this period of like how relationships change once you go to college. So I, as a child, had severe separation issues with my parents. Those are stories for another day. So I was really close to them. And so this transition of like college, that relationship does change so much. I went from being able to have a bad day at school, walk in my house and hug one of my parents and feel better, to like having to make a phone call. And that's such a different relationship. And so I think that kind of resonated with me the most. I think that, and like finding communities once you get to college, because I feel like for the first like year, I was so lost without all those people I had close to me. And then I stumbled upon campus of City Wesley. And I had a community again. And I think that was so important too for part of my transition.
Yeah, that's surrogate family. I love that thought, and just the way that he, that point of investing in a surrogate family. And I gosh, I wish I known that 20 years ago, 24 years ago when I started undergrad. But I think that even that framing might be helpful for many of our friends in this age group. I'll also say that I just really appreciated him naming that our nervous systems are experiencing this. And they're just, I guess for me, it's like, I feel like it's something, whenever I have these moments of just, stress and anxiety, even small moments of depression, you think something's wrong with me and I gotta fix me. And it's like, actually, it's like, my body, like my nervous system, is experiencing the moment. And that's what this is, and there's a whole lot of daylight in that for me, I think.
And that's actually the first thing he said too, that kind of clicked with me a little bit, because it gives you a scientific reason behind like the things you are feeling in that moment. Which just feels so validating.
Yes, right? Like, oh, it's reasonable that I'm stressed by a stressful life. Oh, wow. Well, I'm just, again, very grateful for Krispin. Thank you, very Allison, much for making the connection happen, because you're the one whose title is in charge of all the things, making all the things happen.
I want that on a shirt.
We'll make it. We'll make a Studio Wesley shirt with Allison's face on it. I make all the things happen. That'll be great. And then you'll never talk to me ever again. Well, friends, whether you joined us live or you're watching this by video, thank you so much for joining us for this first episode of Studio Wesley Live. We have had an incredible time, and we'll be back next month. Be looking for the date and time, but we'll be back next month for another conversation, again, around the intersection of mental health and wellness, but another conversation with someone who can really help us navigate this season, and just be well. So, friends, thanks so much, and everybody have a good night. Mike, you can end the broadcast now. And thanks for everything you did, Michael. Appreciate you, bud.